care is so much of what drives the quality of everything. I mean, it might be the essential ingredient in what drives the quality of doing great work is just care. It's just people who really care about what they're doing, and that care puts a level of attention into what you're doing, helps you to notice things, helps you to see certain things that people might not see otherwise, right? The only thing with care is that in many ways, we don't choose the things that we care about.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art. Well, it's a new year. It's a new year where new things and old things will happen. And then we'll reflect on it at the end of it, like we just did. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Way of the Artist podcast. I'm Evan. Brandon's over there, too. And we're just diving into this one. And I just figured, we just did a year end. So why don't we do something like looking at the year ahead? And I don't know if you're not really a resolution person. I'm not really a resolution person anymore. I'm more of an intention person now. Like, what's my intention for the new year? And I thought I would just, this thought had occurred to me, and this is something that I've been trying to be mindful about, which is more so like I've been doing this in like my men's group, which are great for all you guys out there. Find a good men's group that can do fantastic things. But in terms of like when there's, you're just sharing stuff of what's going on in your life, like what's the rose, what's the bud, and what's the thorn? What are the good things? What are the things in motion? What are the things that aren't, what's the thing that's the thorn in your side at the moment, right? Just kind of sharing and having this is something that I heard from a great Canadian singer-songwriter named Ron Sexsmith, who said like part of his philosophy in when he's writing lyrics is it needs to scare me a little bit to say it. And so saying something that scares me a little bit to say it, right? Even just a little bit, it's like, okay, I can say it, but it makes you a little uncomfortable. Sometimes that's a very good thing. So that was something that was in my head here at the start, and something that I felt like, what's something that I could share at the start of this year. And that's in a way that over I would say last year and still currently, I've felt pretty creatively stagnant in many respects. I've taken a step back from a lot of things, been focusing a lot more on family life and creating, a stable household, things like that. And that's all been good. And that's brought a lot of very good things. And there's a lot of creativity that goes into those things too. But in terms of a lot of the stuff that I went into creatively, as an artist, it's like those things have really taken a big back seat. And so I'm kind of in this place of creative stagnation. And in the time that I do have free, which isn't very much, but the time that I do have free is not usually being used creatively. It's, me just needing to kind of space out for a little while and just do nothing. But there's still a price to pay for that. And, I'm definitely feeling for this year, it's like, okay, getting myself re-engaged with things that are important to me. Guitar playing. Like I don't remember the last time I actually picked up my guitar. It's been months, at least 2 or 3 months probably. So it's kind of moving back into that thing. But the other thing I want to put out there though is that even though it's been sort of creatively stagnant in terms of my actual actions and what I'm doing, there's been a lot of very interesting stuff that's still kind of going on in the background in terms of the stuff that I am planning on getting back into doing. But there's been stuff that's kind of developing there, right? Like stuff that in terms of, what I'm teaching and doing with actors, there's like all kinds of ideas and stuff that's been settling in. And there's something that you said to me before we started recording as well, which connects to that thought a little bit, which is this, I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but that I feel like I'm at a time in my life where there are just certain things where it's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to do that because I think that it's going to work. Like, I don't know, because you never really know, but there's a sense of like, no, this is the thing that I'm doing, and I'm going to stand here. I'm going to own that, right? As opposed to trying to be, I don't know, too shifty is not the right word, but like there's a sense of having my place that's been forming over this last while that wasn't necessarily there before, right? Like a real kind of sense of this is where I am, and I know this is where I am.
Well, that was a really, really nice intro to the year, man. I like that a lot. And yeah, what I was talking about beforehand, I don't know, I saw some, like it was like some artist, like some dance routine type thing that this artist was doing. And yeah, that's what inspired that thought, because she was doing this dance, and it just seemed so unique and so like signature, like, and I don't know how to explain this, but it's like when you see somebody do something that they're like owning it, and it's like you've never really seen it before or experienced it before, and you feel like, I don't know how to explain this exactly, but it's like they know what you want. And I don't know if they know that they know what you want, but it's like they're in tune and you're in tune, and all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, that resonate. What is that? Why does that resonate? And it doesn't just like dance is just one expression. Sometimes it happens in music, it happens in movies and stories, it happens in all sorts of things. But the thing that I admired about it was I felt like this person had basically said, I'm going to do this thing, and this is just like it's like they just did it, and they like owned it, and it was like theirs. But at the same time, it wasn't done because like, look how great I am and look what I can do. It was really done because it's like they were trying to communicate something, and it's almost like they knew exactly what I needed to see them do in a way. And I don't think I'm the only one that had that experience. And I just think it just dawned on me all of a sudden. I was like, there's so much about where like artistry, I think in the early stages is okay, I just want to learn how to do this. Like that's the first stage. Like I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. I'm trying this out. I'm curious. Let's see what happens. And then there comes this stage, and I think we stay in this stage for a very long time in variations of it. It's like, I want to do this right. And I think that stage stays with us for a very long time, and it's hard for us to break through on the most part. I think there are occasional artists that break through it like prematurely compared to like what most people would. They just somehow, maybe they have good guidance, or maybe they just didn't get caught up in something, but somehow they get through it. Like, I think of like someone like River Phoenix, who I really admire so much of his acting, because to me, he was kind of somebody, like if you hear his life story, it's very interesting. If you hear all their stories, like, his whole family and just how they, how they came to be, like he was kind of a performer as a young kid, and they were like kind of on the street, like making money. Like their family was very like, almost like a hippie or bohemian in a sense. Like they were just kind of like, they had this very, almost like, hey, we're just doing this thing as a family together, and we're surviving a little bit different, or we're living a little bit different than the norm. And so performance kind of became a part of their life. But what I find very unique about him is that I forget what director said this, but they were like, you put the camera on River and he would just tell the truth. And I feel like for us as artists, there's a certain point where when we try to do it right, we stop telling the truth. And we're really not trying to not tell the truth. We just don't realize that we're getting caught up in something that's causing us not to tell the truth. And I think you can relate to this, with Meisner, right? Because all of a sudden we start doing it right. We start thinking about how it needs to be done and we stop trusting the moment, and then we're not telling the truth. But we're not trying to tell the truth. We are trying to tell the truth. It's just that the way we're doing it, you can't tell the truth that way. And I think this is kind of like what I discovered with this. It just hit me with this dance artist, whereas like she to me is telling the truth. I don't know if I could tell you what that truth is, but it feels true. It feels real. It feels genuine. It feels unique. It doesn't feel like she's trying to do it right. It feels like she trusts it. She owns it. And I know because I've been there at moments and I've not been there at moments. And I was just like, well, Brennan, why don't you just do that? Why don't you just like, if you have an inclination, let's just follow that. If you really kind of like have, and I know when I have that feeling, and it does work. It does work because like I've written screenplays where I've come from that place and they work, like I've talked about this many times in the podcast. The one script that I wrote, Love Lost, when I wrote that script, it was like that. I'm just going to tell the truth. But it wasn't like I was trying to lie before that. But the script that I had written before that, I was definitely trying to get it right. Whereas this script wasn't about getting it right. It was in fact very much about let's just tell this story the way it needs to be told. And I don't care. And I literally had a bit of defiance to it. I was a little bit like, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if anybody says, well, this can't be made into a movie, or, it needs more of this or it needs more of that. I'm like, I don't care about any of that. I'm just going to tell the story that I want to tell and we'll go from there. And, and I think like the year end for me, what it's kind of moving me forward into intention, I suppose, for this year is like, well, you're at a point in your life where why don't you just follow those things? And even if they are kind of wrong or they lead you astray, you're going to learn something real. You're going to learn something good, because I have caught myself in the act of trying to get it right many times. Too many times. And it never fucking works. So I'm like, why do you keep going back to it? Because you're not like, by trying to get it right in a way, that's the only way to get it wrong. So just, you have to like, at a certain point, you just have to abandon that whole thing. And you have to be like, yeah, I'm going to just tell the truth. And sometimes it might be a little ugly and it might be a little scary, or it might feel whatever, like just something you don't want to feel or you avoid. And I'll say one other thing before I point this back to you, this mic, is just, I learned a lot. I'd say another big realization I had at the end of the year, which I want to take into this year, is around boundaries in a way that I never thought about boundaries. And I was telling you this a little bit before, but it's like, I struggled a lot last year with like, meaning and value. Like what matters to me anymore? What's the meaning of all this? Like, why do I care? I asked myself that question many, many times. I had a lot of heart-to-hearts myself around those types of topics. And the thing is I would ultimately just keep coming back to the same answers. And I'm like, well, if that's the answer, then what do I do? And eventually I just realized, well, it's just boundaries. It's like, you can't take something you care about and give it to someone who doesn't appreciate it, like doesn't care about it. You got to stop doing that, because that's going to make it feel like the thing you care about doesn't matter. And so my boundaries now are about, if I fucking care about this. Do you care about it? Okay, you care about it. I'm going to give you my fucking heart, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to work as closely as I can with you, because you care about this too. And you're going to treasure this and appreciate this, and you're going to value it like I do. And if you don't, then I'm going to create kind of more of a gap between us. Not in the sense that I won't help you, but like, I'm not going to get as involved with you, because you need to work some things out, because this matters. It's like, would you let someone take care of your kid who's like, I don't care what happens to him? Or would you rather someone who's like, I'm going to make sure that your kid is absolutely safe, totally protected, cared for, given attention, right? That's like what story's like for me. It's like a child. And so when I help somebody with story and they don't care and they go off for the week and they don't even try and they don't, and they just make excuses and they talk about how like whatever, like I'm like, you neglected this beautiful thing that we're trying to work on here. And there's other people that care, but you don't. And it depletes me. I'm giving you all this energy and then I motivate them, encourage them and inspire them the next week or whatever it might be. And they go, okay, rah, 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 I'm going to go do it. And then they do it again. You let me down again. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is like, everybody wants a coach or a mentor who cares. But there's a reason why a lot of coaches and mentors don't care. And it's because people show up and they don't care. So if you want somebody who cares in your life, and this is, like if somebody out there wants to work with me, that's a whole other thing. But like if you were to work with someone like me, I'm like, if we were going to work close together, I would really care about you if we're going to work close together. But you also have to pass through kind of my, evaluation of like, do you care? But if you care, I'm going to care. And I've worked with people where I've cared and they've cared and beautiful things happen. And I've worked with people where I care and they don't care. And it always ends in the same way. I care more than they do, and that's always a problem. But I've never, ever had the experience where somebody's cared more than me. I've never had that experience. I've never had somebody like, because that's the thing about like, and I really pride myself on trying to be a good mentor, teacher, coach. The thing is like, if you don't put energy into these things that you say matter to you, no one else is going to put energy into them. Okay, my last thought, I know I kind of said this was it, but it's basically this. In movie making and filmmaking, the one thing that I learned, and this is a constant across the board, undeniable, every movie, every show, everything needs a champion. And I think if you have something in your heart, some story you want to tell, a script you want to write, a novel you want to make, a movie you want to make, maybe a series you want to make, maybe a song you want to write or an album you want to make, it needs a champion. And you cannot expect your mentor, guide, coach, or whatever who is ever helping you to be the champion. You have to be the champion. You have to be the person that says when things get hard, when things go awry, when life gets in the way, I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to care. I'm going to care. And I'm looking for those people. And I just decided, you know what? Set the intention, man. Just say that's what you want in the world, and then know what you don't want, because I do care. And I've been walking around for the last year going, maybe I don't care. And it's like, no, I do care. I just want to find people that care too. Even with the people I'm not even helping, even the people I make movies with or whatever else we do.
Oh man, there's a few places that we could go from there. I mean, just the last thing you were talking about there, like care is so much of what drives the quality of everything. I mean, it might be the essential ingredient in what drives the quality of doing great work is just care. It's just people who really care about what they're doing, and that care puts a level of attention into what you're doing, helps you to notice things, helps you to see certain things that people might not see otherwise, right? The only thing with care is that in many ways, we don't choose the things that we care about. And, I've run into, I'm thinking of one person in particular, but like a student who I laugh about it now, but it was flabbergasting, like the absolute lack of care, and they were, discreetly, as respectfully as I could, asked not to come back to the class. But it's the thing that goes in my head. It's like, well, then, like, what are we doing here? Because I don't think you actually care about this, and that's fine. It's fine if you don't care about this, because not everybody can care about acting. Yeah. The world needs people who don't care about acting. There's places for you. There's important things for you, because there's something that you do care about, that you probably have some kind of a talent for, right? That there's usually a connection that happens there as well. Talent and care have a lot to do with each other. But that kind of comes back to something else that you said that I was like, oh, that's a really interesting thread. And it's a great artistic thread as well. That the way that you put it was so fantastic, but it was something along the lines of, don't let getting it right get in the way of telling the truth, or something. It was something along those lines, right? Or how trying to get it right can get in the way of the truth. It seems like a thing that just goes like, what? that doesn't sound true.
Yeah.
Where, like, isn't the right thing the true thing? It's like, not necessarily, right? Because that whole thing of what is the right thing, there can be a whole lot of ideas that are caught up in that whole idea of right. And this is something I've had many acting teachers say, well, I mean, at least the ones that were worth their salt, it's just, don't create any sense of that there's a right way to do the scene, that there's a right way of playing this character, right? It's there's only the true way of doing it, because the thing with right is that it's an idea of what right is. Yes. And you don't know what that is. Like, you actually don't, like, it's an unknowable thing that basically and what ends up happening is you end up filling whatever it is that you're doing up with just a bunch of bullshit that you think other people might like. Which, again, you don't know if they will like it, but it's because, like, well, I've seen this and people seem to like that, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And the next thing you know, it's like, where are you in here? Where the fuck is the truth in here? Because all I see is someone just people pleasing. All I see is someone just doing a song and a dance, and I don't know why you're here. It's like, okay, you're here, you're doing this thing, but I don't feel you, right? I don't, and that's, that's something that we talked about a lot last year. I'm sure continue to talk about it, but to me, it comes down to this thing of, as human beings, we have intelligence that is beyond the rational mind. We possess intelligence that's beyond the rational mind, which is not, to me, a woo-woo statement. Like, you can, like one of our favorites, Alan Watts, again, somebody who everyone will probably hear us refer to a lot, and anyone who's a regular listener is like, oh, fuck, here they go with Alan again. But if you've checked out Alan, you probably know exactly what we're talking about and why we talk about him a lot. But, oh, shit, what was I saying?
The Telling the Truth, Trying to Do It Right, Alan Watts.
Trying to do it right, Alan Watts.
Thinking people will like it.
Thinking people will like it. Where are you in the whole thing? Oh, shit. Well, this one. Yeah. And Trying to Do It Right. Save me, Brandon. Save me.
Well, I feel like you're onto something really good here, because trying to do it right, this whole idea that we think our right is the truth is part of the error that I think we all make. I mean, I think we make it in politics. I think we make it in art. I think we make it in relationships, right? So if you remember your thought, just okay, go ahead.
I do. So it was this thing of our intelligence, like that we possess these different intelligence, and so it's. Alan would say something like, well, how do you beat your heart?
Yeah.
How do you do that? And how do you breathe without thinking about it? Like, you can be mindful about your breath and you can actually control it, but how do you do it when you're asleep? That's intelligence that's going on in your system that you don't really know how it works.
Yeah.
You don't know how you do it. Like, yes, certainly we've learned biological processes and studied them and we can describe them, but that still doesn't actually tell you how you do it. How are you doing it right now? Right? And we kind of just act like, well, it's just going on. Right? Like, it's just what happens. It's just the body doing what the body does. And it's like, that's such a reductionistic way of looking at it. And it's also not an entirely true way of looking at it, because it's like, well, but that requires intelligence. There's an intelligence that's in your body that is doing this without you consciously doing it, knowing how to do it. And I think that that's just one example of how this works, but we possess these other kinds of intelligence, and this intelligence also recognizes truth. It recognizes when something true is happening, and that difference between someone who's just trying to do it right and someone who's doing something that's truthful, right? Because I'll take the person who's telling the truth over the person who's just doing it right, over and over and over and over again. I'll watch an actor who's just like, might be complete fucking chaos up there, but they're hitting me with like, there's not a false thing in what's going in what's coming out of their mouth and what they're doing. I will take that, a little bit of messiness, over someone who's very clean and neat and proper, but they're not giving me anything real. There's nothing going on underneath the surface. Not really, right? They can do a good job at making it look like something's going on, but you can tell, right? And what is that? That's that part of us that has a certain kind of intelligence. This is like, you're going through the motions. You like a person who's sad, or a person who's, but you're not really sad, are you? You're just putting on a show like you are, as opposed to the actor who's just really thrown themselves into something, and you're like, holy shit, what did you do to go there? Because you're actually going through it, right? There's something true that I can't deny to what's going on. And that's this thing of the right way is when we're just relying and looking to the rational mind to give us the answer and to tell us what to do. And we're more than that, and we go beyond that. And so I think that it's an interesting thing that I've definitely been exploring over the last year, and am continuing to explore. But just in terms of how it relates to this, that our greater intelligence and this whole thing of between what is right and true, that's something really interesting to me.
Yeah, this is, it's an interesting thread we're pulling on here. I'm really kind of excited about where this is unfolding, because, like confidence, for example, is more about gesture than it is about doing the right things. Like, if you want to experience confidence, you want to be confident, you pick yourself up, like hold your head up high and straighten your back and stand up and breathe into your diaphragm, and use your full voice when you talk. Don't do these little mumble shit. You have to do these physical actions, and what it'll do is it'll trick the kind of automatic part of you to go, hey, we're behaving confidently. We must believe what we're doing. We must, and like happiness, smile, like just smile. And all of a sudden you'll start to feel happy. You really will. And you can do this. And the thing is like, there's inertia, and there is like kind of the inertia of momentum, which I think is a really important thing for us to all understand, is that you think you are who you are, but you're not that. That is just a very small sliver of who you are. You are a thing in motion that is activated under a certain kind of inertia that will continue on unless interrupted. And so if you are like really sad, and you're like victim-y, and you're like down, and you're like, I got low confidence, and you're woe is me and all this shit, that's a momentum. There's an inertia in that. And you will continue that inertia until interrupted. And you can convince yourself that this is who you are and this is the truth, and it is not. And this is a really fucked up thing when you're in it, because you think, well, how do I ever get out? And honestly, like I went through the fucking worst of depression. Sometimes I think about it. I'm like, how did I ever even fucking get there? And how did I get out? Like, cause it was fucking horrible when I think about like how fucking bad it was when I was in that, but I was in an inertia, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know what to do. And, when you're depressed, the last thing you want anyone to tell you is like, just be happy, just do this. But honestly, I can tell you, like, it takes a little work, especially if you're like deep in your little pit, but straighten your back, lift your head up, smile. Just, I know it's all going to feel totally false and totally fake, but the desire to feel happy, that's real. Because when I was down in the dumps and I was in my worst place, like, I didn't want to be there, but I couldn't not be there at the time. I was just like, I was stuck in it. And then I would get out of it for a little bit and I'd slink back into it and it would just happen again. And it's just like a cycle. And it's like, and I think that the truth is that you have access to so much, but you choose so little. And when we think we have it right, I think we're choosing so little. And the truth is more like, hey, you have access to something that is so much more than what you're choosing. So why don't you just tell the truth? And it'll take you into something you don't even know to choose. And you see this in acting all the time. You see moment to moment acting. All of a sudden an actor, one thing's happening, boom, they're emotionally hit. Boom, the next actor is hit from that. And they're off on this whole thing and something's happening. And you're like, what is happening? And you're in the audience watching it absolutely captivated until all of a sudden it goes cut, that's the scene. And you're like, holy shit, what just happened? And you're like, you don't even know because it all happened so quickly. All of a sudden, things just kind of like, and that's the thing about attention. It's like from an audience point of view, when the truth happens, we have this kind of like quality of like, oh, I got to look at this. What is happening? And you're trying to pick it up because all of a sudden things matter. Like details matter, things matter. You're not in the truth when you're kind of like blasé, like it almost not paying attention. And you can kind of tell yourself, like if you're bored in your life, you're not in connection with the truth. You're somehow out of the truth because like life is fucking invigorating. Like it's fucking fascinating. Like the amount of stuff that's going on, like what's happening, even when you're alone, but the thing is you're missing it because you're probably too minutely focused on something. You can do all sorts of things. You're talking about breathing. Like how do we, well, everybody is presumably, we'll hold Evan. Everybody presumably right now is breathing and doesn't even think about it. But we're not all breathing the same. Some of us are breathing a little deeper. Some of us are breathing a little more shallow. Some of us are breathing into our diaphragm. Some of us are just breathing into our lungs. Some of us are holding our heads up. Some of us are letting our heads droop. We're different physicalities, but we're doing similar things. But the thing is that our physicalities are forming the things we're doing. And so I think like, one of the big lessons I learned in 2024, I'd say is just like, don't try to control or force what I'm not in control of. Have faith in all that stuff, trust in that stuff, and like allow the process to take its place. But take ownership of the things I am in control of. And it's very limited. But what I do control is really things that mostly, not all, but mostly around myself. So I can straighten my back. I can lift my head up. I can breathe into my diaphragm. I can consciously start to do some of these things. And it will help my body get into a rhythm without my control of getting me into the right mindset, the right feel, the right, the right walk. One last thing I'll share, and maybe this is a random thought, but I think it's connected. So on December 27th, I remember the date because it was so fucking vivid, I had a dream. And in this dream, it was like the most real of an experience that you can have, like an ayahuasca journey, like just like it was really there. And this Black Panther comes walking up to me and kind of nudges its head against me. It's fucking big and powerful. It's like a beast. And it nudges its head against me and I pet it and I could feel its fur and it was like coarse and soft. And this thing was just like powerful, but it was like my friend. and it was just there with me. And then we were kind of walking through this area, and the panther would kind of like walk off kind of in the distance, and it would be kind of stalking around out there, but not quite out of sight, but kind of like out there. And then at one point I tried to call it over to me. I like tried to summon it and be like, come here, whatever. And it wouldn't. And I couldn't get it to like come to me. And then I was like, okay, well, I don't control this thing. And then I asked it, will you come over here? And it came over to me. And in this moment, I was kind of like, wow, it will respond. It listened. It could understand in this dream. It could understand when I wanted it to come. And if I was willing to ask for it, it would come, but on its own will. And I've thought a lot about this dream. I've had, a week or so to think about it. And it tells me a little bit about something, and I'm just going to interpret, but it's like, there are certain things where you can ask for them, but you cannot summon them. You cannot demand them. You're not in control of them. And I feel like the truth is kind of like that. You kind of like, sometimes you have to just ask for it, but you don't get to just say, come here, do this now. That's like knowing. That's like, I'm going to do it this way. Like, you do what I say. And it's like, no, the truth comes on its own terms. It comes through you in a way that you open up to it and you gracefully ask for its presence to appear. And it doesn't always show up, I think, necessarily the way that you want it to or expect it to. But when it's there, it's fucking there, and you know it's there. And I feel like this panther was kind of like that. It was like, it came to me, and it was, when it was fucking near me, it was near me. Like, there's no fucking mistaking this fucking big, giant black cat. And then when it was out there, it was like, yeah, well, the truth's just right out there. It's just right out there floating around. I can see it, but I can't touch it. And it's not going to come to me by me just yelling at it and say, get over here. It's not, it won't, it'll be defiant to me. And it was like, there's a lot of other things that I've interpreted about this dream. You can look into what Black Panthers mean. I know you had a Black Panther show up in your ayahuasca journey, which is very interesting too. But yeah, I know that kind of seems like almost off topic, but to me, it feels very like resonant in this moment, because I find that in my journey, like particularly with art, finding my way into an artistic piece is very much like this. I can't just come into a script or a story and say like, come here now, do what I want. It's more like, will you show me? Will you come here? Will you, and it's like a respect. I have to respect it. And if I do, all of a sudden when it comes near, it's like something will happen, So that's kind of my thought.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I like it. Sometimes people are like, oh God, someone's going to start talking about their dream. But, it's like, I typically, I'm the same way. It's like, I won't share a dream with anybody unless it's something that was so clear and like vivid, because typically there's something, and there's a lot of very interesting things that dream's pulling up. And there's some of the things you're saying there as well, like, the truth has like its own, you can't force it, right? But there's an engagement there. There's a relationship that's there. And I feel like that's, in many respects, that is what an artist is involved with. Like, you are in a relationship with truth, and that's an interesting thing to navigate, especially in a Western society where everything is like, where there's a will, there's a way, right? And everything, it's very much about, how do we extract this? How do we, pull this thing out? How do we exploit this? It's about getting it now and getting it as fast as we can, as quickly as we can, it's very result oriented, not process oriented, but that's precisely the way that creativity works. You can't force it. You can't. I remember, like, I think it's Larry Moss's book on on acting. You know, he talks about when you're trying to sort of like when you're using like an emotional trigger of some kind, right? Like if you need to kind of summon a specific emotion for a scene or for whatever reason it might be, but you need to have some sort of a specific reaction. And he talks about it as being like, you can't force it, because you try to force it, that thing's running away. And he used a metaphor of like, it's like a kitten. Like, you can't force a kitten to come to you, right? Yeah. Like, and it's interesting, you know, it's a panther, right? Yeah. Big kitten. But like, you have to coax it. You have to be gentle with it. You have to be patient, right? Which so flies against so much of it. It's like, no, you gotta get it. You gotta do it now, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but that's actually works against us here. That's working against what we're trying to do. And you have to move in that tricky space where it's like, okay, yes, we are trying to get a certain result here, but in order to get the certain result, we can't just go rushing towards it, or we can't just start making demands upon it, right? Like it has its own timing. It has its own kind of will, right? And we have to be responsive to that. We have to work with it, right? And that's and again, you put it in a way, I mean, I've time-stamped it here just so I can go back and hear it again, because you phrased it in a way that was really fantastic. Again, you got a couple of great sound bites in this one, Brandon, just in terms of how you just sort of put some things in some very provocative ways that have got me chewing on some stuff here internally.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting how this podcast works for me. Is so much of this is like we have a talk, and then there's like a lot of work that happens for me over the course of a week or whatever when we step away. And it's always been like that ever since, even before we ever started recording. We just have these talks. And, you know, I'd even say even maybe since I first met you, Evan, like it just, like you and I, we always kind of like, we care and we talk about this stuff and we really try to work it out. And they step away, and then it helps me with my process. And so, you know, I mean, it's all a work in progress. And I think that's kind of the thing about this is like, we're really like, I think you and I, we both care about, you know, what it means to be an artist. And I think that's I don't know, like, I don't know if anyone agrees. I know you agree. I think you agree, I should say. I don't know anything, but I think you agree, is that I think that's important in this time, this day and age. Like, because I feel like the artist can so easily kind of almost be like put into a commodity. Like, well, AI can generate that and whatever. And AI can do some fucking unbelievable things. Like some of the stuff I've seen it do now, I'm just like, it's amazing. But there's something about like a real artist, and it's more in the spirit and the soul of the artist that, you know, the final product, it doesn't like, it has to come from something. And creativity has a way of continually topping itself. So like you create something and you think, wow, that's the most creative thing I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden that becomes normal. And then creativity does that again. And then it goes, that's the most, but like what was once creative almost becomes normal. And that's how creativity works. And that's the problem with trying to get it right, is that you're always trying to copy what used to be cool and unique and now is just kind of normal. And the truth wants you to do something new within a realm, like on the shoulders of whatever had happened before. And the problem is you don't know what that is until all of a sudden you're there and you're faced with it, and it is what it is. And then, like, you know, and at the same time, there's something you said at the beginning of this podcast. You said something along the lines of like, we're on to something new, but we're also like, we have the old as well. And I feel like the old never really loses its place. And my point here is that I don't think humanity is ever going to grow old of heartbreak. I don't think humanity is ever going to grow old of love. I don't think we're ever going to get tired of the father and son, the mother and daughter relationships. I don't think like brothers, sisters, I don't think this stuff is ever going, it doesn't have an expiry date. It's somehow relevant to us forever and ever and ever and ever again. And there's something about that is just timeless, and you don't touch it. You just let it live, let it breathe the way it needs to breathe in this time, in this day and age, in this way. And so I think as artists, those are those things where it's like, look, I'm just tapping into the fucking humanity of fucking relationship, and that's just what it is, or whatever it might be. And you don't even need to worry about that, because that's going to come out in its own way. And it's, and your heartbreak, like a 16-year-old's heartbreak today and a 16-year-old's heartbreak in 20 years from now, both matter. That's fucking wild. And 1,000 years ago, it mattered. And it's like, so don't like, I think the other thing too is like, I think as artists, we have to be very careful not to like minimize our experiences. Like, because like, if, like I wrote a love story. That was like the love story, Love Lost was my kind of like this love story. But when I wrote that story, it was my love story. It was my version of a love story, at least at that time in my life. It's just a love story. So many love stories have been made. But what I realized through that process, I just had this inclination I needed to write a love story. But what I learned through the process was that love stories are not going anywhere. They're just not. We're just always going to have a place for them. We just are endlessly going to want to know the next love story. And that's just life. And so the truth of the next love story is all we care about. What's the truth of this love story? What's the truth of that love story? And somehow these love stories, they all have these parallels and similarities, like that. Most of them, at least, they're tethered together in this timeless kind of interconnected way. But yet there's a little bit of a frame or a little bit of an experience of them that's somehow a little bit different. And that's the truth we're looking for. And I think as artists, what's very exciting is that we don't have to do a lot new. We just need to tap into that little tiny little bit of newness, that little tiny little bit of modern truth, or whatever that might be. And modern, and I mean our contemporary modern truth. And that's enough for people to be like, wow. And literally, wow. Your wife said something one day. She said it to you. You said it to me. And so I don't know if this is how she said it, but she said something about coaching, like all we really have to do is help transform someone 1%. It's all we really have to do. And I mean, it's fucking true. It really is true, because 1%, I mean, even if it's like 0.1%, that changes your life. If you are transformed, if you have a transformational moment, that changes the trajectory of your life, therefore and ever, And so I just think, I think as we're kind of navigating this experience, I mean, like, look, I don't know what this year is gonna hold for us. I don't know what's gonna come, and I decided, look, I'm not gonna make any plans on what I think's gonna happen this year, but I do know that I got transformed over 2024. And I'm a new man today. I'm a new man with some new perspectives. And although they might be small, they might be very minuscule in comparison to like the overall arcing momentum or inertia of who I am, they're enough to make some meaningful difference in how I'm going to move forward. And so I'm going to try that. I'm going to move forward with this small bit of transformation. And I think I'm just a little bit closer to some type of truth. And I'm a little bit further away from trying to do it right. And if that's the victory of the last year, then hey, I don't know. I think I won, and I think I'm winning. And I think I like that. I think I'm winning. I think that's a good way for me to look at it, yeah, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but you chose my favorite beer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm a fan of Tofino Brewing Company, and I didn't think I'd ever had this one. So this one's the Ethereal IPA, first beer of the new year. And it's really good. It's like I had no concerns getting a beer from Tofino. I think my favorite from them is still their blonde. Oh, yeah? Their blonde is something special. But this has been a very enjoyable drink for a very enjoyable conversation.
Well, I'll say one last thing about it. Yeah, this is, I had this beer, I don't know, several months ago at least, and if not longer. Maybe it was actually a year and a half ago. I don't know, but it is a strong beer because it's like, I just want to say a couple things about it because since we stumbled on it, I don't know if we ever had it on the podcast before. We might have, but it's, I think I might have brought it, but it's 6.7% alcohol. So it's pretty high. And it's an IPA, so it's a little bit hoppy. So if you're not into hoppy beers, I mean, it might not be for you. But I just want to say this very interesting little tidbit of information. When we started the podcast, I didn't like IPAs. So the fact that an IPA is now my favorite beer, I think that's growth and transformation. I just think it's super flavorful. I think it's just delicious. And it is a little bit hoppy. I don't mind it. But you know what? I guess the thing that I just want to note on this is like, I literally, when we started recording, IPAs were like, as long as it's not an IPA, I'm pretty good. Like, or a sour. I didn't really like sours either. But the thing is like, I've grown to like it. I've evolved. My taste buds have evolved. I've learned to appreciate them. And for this kind of beer to stumble along and kind of be my favorite, there's just something about it. I just think it's like, it's pretty hard, heavy hitter, but I just think it tastes great, you know? There's a couple Belgian triples that I would say, which are right in that little nook of this one. So they're very close. So this one's edging them out maybe a little. And on another day, I might say, oh, that 33 acres Belgian triple is fucking, that's right up there. But you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Anyway, do you have final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Some final thoughts on this. You know, I'm going to jump off of some of what you were saying at the end. You know, it's doing this year-end stuff. I'm just realizing and noticing it almost in the first time is that it's like, you know, this is almost like a subtle ritual that we kind of do or maybe not so subtle for some people, but every new year we go through this little ritual that's a little bit of a, you know, it's a death and rebirth thing, right? Like in a weird way, because we do these things like resolutions and stuff like that, which is like the old year is gone. It's like there's an opportunity for something new to happen. And I love this idea. I don't know if I've ever heard that thing from Kat.
Oh, you told me. No,
what?
Yeah.
1%, the whole 1% thing? That doesn't ring a bell to me.
Dude, you told
at all.
Me from her, and you said she said it. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild. Because I remember, you know, some of the things like, you know, don't tell people your opinions, tell them your experiences and stuff like that. But the 1%, she's full of gems. Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing that for the first time. But it's like, yeah, it's, you know, it's if that just that 1% can be huge. It can be absolutely massive. And I think that I want to end this one, at least on my end of things here, and as far as like where this one started out and my own creative stagnation and feeling of creative stagnation, you know, I'm looking at this year and ahead where it feels like there's stuff that's been bubbling under the surface that's gonna, and you know, some of it's gonna start creeping up to the surface. And my whole thing with that is not to take it too seriously. Just kind of like we do on the podcast. Yeah. Don't take it too seriously. Or that beautiful quote from Aldous Huxley, like lightly. Like just take it all lightly. You know, don't get too heavy about these things. Like just go and do them, but really do them. I think that's what's really where I'm coming to at the end of this conversation, and hoping that 1% is on my side for that, because I know that's something that can easily get in my way. Is it gets much too serious, and not only does that take away from the fun, but it really puts a lot of constraints on what you're actually capable of and what your best actually is. Once you start getting too serious about the shit, it's like another one of those little dances, like the difference between caring, like we were talking about before, like caring about what you do and being too serious about the whole thing. It's like care and be light, I guess. So those are my things looking ahead for this year is yeah, like go lightly, do it and do it lightly.
Well, that's a nice way to finish. I think that's really important, is that to care is important, but choose what you care about, and don't care about everything, and don't care about something just because you think you should care about it. Like, care about what you truly care about, and if you don't care about it, be honest with yourself that you don't care about it. I think that's really important. I would say to myself, as I say this almost as advice, because I'm not really saying this to our audience, but almost to myself, and I think that's what this kind of wrap up in this episode is going to be for me, advice to myself. If someone wants to take that advice themselves, well, by all means, but that's not the point here. I would tell myself, just be honest. Do you care about it or do you not care about it? And if you do care about it, but you're having some kind of pain, then maybe there's something in the way that you're going about it. Like maybe you're taking it too seriously, and I would say I'm learning how, like, where things get kind of troublesome when I care about stuff. But like, I'd say one of the big lessons I really learned about care is like, well, if you care about it, then draw better boundaries, I would say to myself. Like if you figure out that you care about it, then I would say for me, the most pain that comes for me when I care about something is that if I have pain around something I care about, it's because I don't have good boundaries around what I care about. So like, would I let someone talk to someone I love that way, that I care about? No, I wouldn't. So why would I let someone talk about this thing I care about, or what this activity I care about, or whatever that way? I would just say, like, I don't want to hear it. Like I would, like, not here. It's not allowed. It's not acceptable. And if you want to do that, I'm either going to walk away or we're not going to talk about it. Like, and I would stand up. I would literally make a stand. It'll actually and that's a good thing. I think it's good to like, kind of like fight for something, to fight for your boundaries around something. And the other thing I would say is, like, if I don't care about something, don't try to make myself care about it. Like, just be honest. You don't care about it. It doesn't matter to you. Like, it's irrelevant to you just for some reason. And everybody else cares about it, or you're supposed to care about it. It's like, well, I don't. So whatever, let's move on. So I would tell myself that. And I think, as we've gone through this podcast episode, this year, I would say, like, this year, I feel like very clear on the little things that I know I need to do that will move me in the right direction. And my intention is to focus on doing those little things in those areas that I care about, and not letting my energy bleed out into those things I don't care about. So kind of drawing boundaries around like that, so that I use my energy for the right things, like for the things that matter to me, and not put my energy into things I think I should be putting my energy into. And instead of doing these grand gestures, like there's these things that I want to do, these big things, like, well, I don't know if they're that big, but I don't know, to me, they feel big. And instead of focusing on accomplishing this big thing, like climbing this mountain or doing whatever this thing is, like metaphorically, I'm going to kind of more focus on like what we talk about in the podcast is like, I'm on the journey to wherever that is, and I'll get there. I'm like, when I stop and I ask myself like, well, will you ever do this? It's like, well, yeah, I will. I mean, and if I don't, then I don't. But the thing is like, I'm probably going to do it, but I don't know if it's going to happen on my timeline. And I think about this dream with the panther, like, come over here. It's like, it's not just going to come over to you. You don't just get it because you want it, but it will, if you ask for it, if you earn it, it will come to you. Like, you will get it. And so I'm just going to look at this year as just like earning what I care about and not trying to earn what I don't care about. And I think that's a pretty big shift for me as a person. I feel like that's enough. And that's a big thought too. What is enough? What is enough? So I don't know if anybody has anything that they can take from those final thoughts. I mean, that is advice to myself. But if that will help you, I struggled a lot with not being enough or not feeling like I was ever doing enough when I was younger. So I don't know, like maybe that's a good question for us to start the new year with. Like, what is enough? And like, and that one, just focus on doing that 1%. I think your wife she was onto something when she said that. Like, she tapped into just a very simple truth, because we can handle 1%. We can handle that. 100% change is fucking impossible. 1% I can work to, I might be able to do that. So if I'm 1% better, hey, you know what? I'll be 2% better next year. So there we go. So happy 2025, people, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.